Hey everyone, I'm Richard, here today to dissect the new Project Scorpio reveal. What are the specs of the next Xbox? Is there anything further we can derive from the reveal that Microsoft hasn't told us about? And crucially, where does this leave PlayStation 4K Neo? Well, let's start by taking a look at some elements of the spec that Microsoft kind of, well, inadvertently revealed. The trailer had a number of rendered sections showing the Scorpio motherboard, and there's some fascinating detail here. Firstly, and most obviously, there's the fact that, just like Sony, Microsoft is sticking to a single system-on-chip processor here. Now, there was some speculation that the new Xbox would have a separate CPU and GPU in order to really push the power envelope, but this hasn't happened, clearly. It makes economic sense to go for an SoC like this, but over and above that, it essentially confirms that once again we're looking at AMD technology. Only Intel and AMD can produce x86 cores for a games console, and sticking with AMD means good compatibility with the existing Xbox library. And that single processor also means that we're almost certainly sticking with AMD's low-power CPU cores here, the same Jaguar architecture found in Xbox One, PS4, and indeed PS4K Neo, or else some kind of evolved equivalent. Now, we were kind of hoping that AMD's next-gen Zen architecture could be introduced here. Now, we can still hold out some hope that this is the case, but if so, I would have expected Microsoft to shout more about it. But more than that, Zen, initially at least, is a high-power desktop CPU part. It's going to require a big slice of silicon to hold 8 cores, and I just can't see them combining that with a 6 teraflop GPU in a single chip. But there's something else worth looking at in the motherboard renders, and that's the configuration of the memory modules that are surrounding the SoC processor there. Now, we count 12 of those DRAMs in total. Combine that with Microsoft's 320 gigabytes per second memory bandwidth figure, and this strongly suggests a 384-bit memory bus connecting the main processor with 12 gigabytes of GDDR5 RAM. But it's the GPU that Microsoft is clearly most proud of, giving us a stated 6 teraflops of processing power. Impressive stuff. So, how has Microsoft done this? Well, we know that Neo is using the Polaris 10 graphics core for its approximate 4.2, 4.3 teraflops, and short of an insane Polaris overclock, we're pretty certain that Scorpio is using AMD's next-gen part, Vega, the chip designed to replace the Fiji in the R9 Fury line. Now, we know via a spec leak from an AMD engineer that the full Vega has 64 compute units. Now, realistically, to get more usable chips from the production line, Microsoft will be utilizing 56 or possibly 60 of those CUs. This suggests something like an 800 MHz to 850 MHz GPU. So it's a bigger processor than Neo, and it's running at a lower clock speed. But this is to be expected. It's usually the case with larger processors. Now, Vega in its PC guise will be paired with HBM memory, and we can be pretty sure that this is off the table now since we have seen conventional DRAM modules on Microsoft's motherboard renders. But the combination of the lower GPU clock and the reduction in compute units makes that a pretty good call. HBM would be overkill for a 6 teraflop GPU, and obviously very, very expensive. But for me, the real question is this: can this GPU deliver the true 4K gaming that Microsoft is promising? Well, on the face of it, based on what we know about the PC parts, it's a bit unlikely. So check this out. It's Star Wars Battlefront running on GTX 980 Ti and Fury X at 4K, and yet performance is nowhere near the 60 FPS we really want to see on this title. But if we use Battlefront's internal resolution scaler to drop the pixel count to 85%, that's about 3264 by 1836 resolution. Yeah, we get to 60 FPS, and yes, it looks magnificent, but it's still upscaling, and not the true 4K we're being promised. And there's something else too. That Fury X has around 8.4 teraflops of power, way more than Scorpio. So I reckon Microsoft will be counting on two things here. First of all, they will rely on developers specifically targeting their GPU configuration. And secondly, they'll be hoping that the architectural improvements AMD has added to the latest GCN will let the new tech punch above its weight. So, where does this leave PlayStation 4K Neo? Well, I've seen the internal documents detailing how Sony wants developers to support 4K. And yeah, there's no real spoilers here, it's all about upscaling. Now there are some pretty clever algorithms in place there, but as we saw with PS4 and Xbox One comparisons, the bottom line is that just having a bigger, faster GPU goes a long way. If Neo comes out this year, Sony should still do well, but let's say we're talking about a March 2017 release. Well, I can see a lot of hardcore gamers holding on for 6 months or so just to ensure they get the more powerful piece of kit. But the elephant in the room here is price. If Scorpio has more RAM and a bigger processor than Neo, well, it stands to reason that it's just going to cost a fair bit more. Okay, so that's where we're at for now. We'll have more soon. But in the meantime, well, I couldn't help but chuckle at this.
We can render fully uncompressed pixels. These are the highest quality pixels that anybody is seeing.
It's all about those pixels, huh? See you next time.